On the podcast today is serial entrepreneur and currently the founder and CEO of the Transportation Guys, Jack Whatley. Jack's novel approach to hiring top talent has made him one of the most sought-after recruiting and efficiency consultants in the world. But before we dive into the interview with Jack, we want to congratulate HTC graduate Vessi Cella for closing 2 real estate deals totaling over $16,000 in commission. Congratulations to Vessi. Now, here's Dan and Jack.
Welcome to another episode of the Dan Lok Show. Today, I am very, very excited. I have an exceptional gentleman with me. I'm bringing you an expert, but not just any expert. Sometimes we're going to talk about culture, we're going to talk about efficiency. But Jack is a serial entrepreneur, also the CEO and founder of the Transportation Guys.
That is correct.
Right? And you have a new book coming up.
I do.
Called The Human Code.
That is, and it's the human code, the DNA of hiring in the new economy.
We're definitely going to talk about that. So Jack, before we go into some of your expertise, I want to talk about your background. How did you even get into what you do today?
Was really not by chance and not by design.
Yes.
I started my world in advertising.
Okay.
And because I've always been kind of an advertising geek, and I sold direct mail and many different forms of advertising until I finally landed this job at Pacific Bell in the old days.
Yes.
Where we used to sell yellow page advertising, believe it or not.
Big yellow pages.
Got it.
All right.
And the beauty of that was great customers, good thing to do. Sad part with the advertising was, as I spent about 9 years at the company thinking that I'm going to be able to retire here and this is where I was going to enjoy my life, I realized that there was a major shift going on in the world. And that shift was the internet. And because I believe being a student of life is a critically important thing to do, not only did I sell advertising, but I was very involved in creating marketing campaigns and tracking the results of those campaigns so I could share that information with the next customer that I had. And then once I seen that challenge coming, I figured first thing I did was, I'll go into business for myself. What do I want to do? So I opened a chain of dry cleaners, believe it or not.
Okay.
I did dry cleaners for a while, and it just didn't have the level of interaction that I was looking for with people. Standing behind a counter is not fun. You know?
People put in coins.
Exactly.
You're not exercising your creativity.
Very far from exercising my creativity, even though I did grow the company really large with my marketing principles. We started out with direct mail, built the company really large, and then I just realized it wasn't me, so I sold it. And while I had sold it, I was still working for the Yellow Pages at the time, and I had a significant other who was in the world of staffing. And her company closed, and what I did is got frustrated with her, because what would happen is every day, all day long, and at night, her phone kept ringing. I was like, what are these people doing? She says, they're calling for orders. I says, well, what are they looking for? She tells me. One night, her and I sit down, put together a business plan. 5 years later, we built it to $10 million, and I ended up selling it to her so I could chase my new dream. And that new dream was I was going to retire. And on March 8th, 2008, I signed my sale to her. I had a bunch of real estate in escrow. I figured I'm going to live the fat life. Figure out, what am I going to do?
Yes.
Well, that didn't turn out as good as I thought it would.
Yeah.
Needless to say, she never paid me. The economy went upside down. And I went from hero to zero really, really fast. But I was really fortunate because of the fact that I believed in 2 philosophies that all people need to have. And one is you need to be a student of life. Because if you're not learning while you're interacting with people throughout the day, you're losing a lot of everything.
Right.
And then there was a statement that my dad told me, which just kind of stuck. It was one of those things. And he says, son, if you make yourself so valuable that people can't live without you, you can write your own ticket. And that was the thing that influenced me to become the student of life so that I could fine-tune my skill set high enough so that no matter what happened, I'm able to transfer over to many different companies.
You brought up such a good point, because one of the concepts I teach all my viewers and listeners and students, and that's the concept of high income skill.
Okay.
Where I talk about most people, they go to school, they learn about how to get a high income job, right? It's a high income job. I work for a big company. I climbed the ladder. That's what they're taught to do, right? Or they get it into what I call high income profession.
Okay.
It could be an insurance agent, it could be a real estate agent, it could be a mortgage broker, it doesn't matter what it is. But they have a high income profession. Let's say they're making 6-figure a year. That's good.
It's good money.
Decent money. But the minute they leave that profession, or let's say I'm a real estate agent, I'm selling in this particular city, well, the minute I leave that, that's gone.
Exactly.
Right? All my clientele, all that's gone. Versus what you've done is amazing is, what I always teach is high income skill, because skill is transferable.
Exactly.
You can work one industry, you can work another industry, it doesn't matter, right? And that's kind of what you've done, right?
It's exactly what I did when I entered the world of staffing. You know what I knew about it? Absolutely nothing. But you know what I'm good at? Advertising, marketing, and sales.
That's right.
So I took those 3 principles.
Skills,
we put in those skill sets. We instituted them and took a lot of our competition out the back door because they lived in the old school world of doing it.
Correct. And then because even from the Yellow Page experience, you learn about advertising, you learn about human psychology, what makes people tick, right?
Exactly, you do. And it's important that you understand that, because there's going to be key things that you need to say or do to get people to feel comfortable, build trust with you, so that they're willing to open up their wallet and share their money.
And then, so when it comes to staffing, share with us your principles.
My principle of staffing is really an interesting one, and it's pretty simple. If you hire someone who can do the job, they'll work for your paycheck. But if you hire someone who believes in your company values, and then you have someone who's going to work for more than just money. They're going to give you their blood, sweat, and tears, because it's not just a job to them. It's a personal identity. And the challenge that most businesses aren't getting nowadays is this. In the old days, I grew up in that era where you go to school, get a job, stay at that job forever, climb the ladder, hope you get to go watch At the End of the World, and what do we all know now? That ain't ever going to happen anymore. And anyone who believes that, I got some oceanfront real estate I'll be happy to sell you right here in Arizona, okay?
Yes.
And so basically what we did is I took those principles and we used them to attract top talent for the new marketplace. And what I mean by that is right now we're currently in a situation where businesses are going through a major shift. In the old days, it was like, we need to focus on customers, be customer-centric, Six Sigma. Everything was talking about getting customers. Well, I feel that the new customer of the future moving forward are going to be your team members, the people that you have working with you, because we all know your company's only as good as what? The people you surround yourself
100%.
with. There's no other way around
it. 100%. Yeah, and then what do you think the challenges are? Is it also because that companies maybe have a more difficult time attracting even younger people, millennials, and they feel like they may be difficult to manage, they have ADD, right?
Oh, geez, they all tell me that. As soon as I tell people, what do you do for a living? They go, what's up with the millennials? And here's what I say, there's not a thing wrong with them at all. What's happening is you're not speaking to what's important to them. Because remember how the old days were, you go to school, you get that job, you stay there forever, and what happened to all those millennials? Their parents lived by that credo. And what do we all know? Everyone that's had their company sold out from underneath them, closed because they're worth more money dead than alive. And what's happening is businesses treated their workforce as if they're expendable. Well, that shift has changed. Right now, there's more jobs than there's people to fill them. And with the advent of technology, it's going to even get tougher, because that skilled, high-set employee is going to be even more in demand, which is going to require more money. To attract them. But the funny thing is this, is if you do research on people and why they look for a job, or why they choose a job, I should say, money's only only one or two. There's 5 other main reasons, and guess what? Not one of them costs you a penny. It's all based on the company's value system and how they integrate that value system into their culture. So my book is called The Human Code, and what the Human Code basically is the way we explain that. We all know that if you don't pay a decent wage, no one's going to work for you. So the first part of the human code element is going to be compensation. You got to be competitive and offer a decent living for someone.
You got to give them security.
You got to give them security and a reason to want to come work for you to begin with. But how you reel them in and keep them is by your choosing person who sees your company's culture as a way that they can help them be a better them, and you live those values every day, no matter how hard it is.
Right. And when I first learned about culture, like many years ago, was still growing my business. I had a much smaller business. And when I read about culture, I always thought, Jack, this culture thing is like, it's like intangible. What does it mean? Like,
Right.
I want to get customers, right? I want to sell. It's like a meditation.
Exactly.
It feels like that, right? But once I understand now how profound it is, as I grow to this point, it's actually extremely critical. So for a company, let's say for an entrepreneur watching this, first of all, how do we know what is the culture that we have right now? So where we are, and how do we create the culture that we want to attract the right talents?
Well, first thing you want to do is understand, who do you want on your team? Once you understand who you want on your team, then what you do is you build your company around it. Now, I started the Transportation Guys in 2012, and I built that company specifically to attract top talent. Because we all know that top talent wants what? They want to make better money than anybody else. But more importantly, that's only part of their desire. The other part of their desires are what? They want to feel valued, they want to be important, and they want to have a future that makes sense. So what I did is I created an environment where someone could live those lifestyles.
So what you're saying is that not just the creating company for the customers to deliver the product, deliver the service, but you create the ideal company that attracts the right people that you want, right?
Exactly, because if you have the right people on your team, then customers are easy to come by. Because the best part about being in business is most people are lazy. They don't get the customer experience. They don't understand the importance of how to bring someone into the system, but more importantly, wow them the whole way. And you can only do that with people who care about what they do, instead of the people who are just working for a paycheck.
And then what about in terms of values? How do we make sure we have the right values?
Well, I think values are going to be a derivative of the owner of the company.
Okay.
And that person's credo or rules they live by.
Everyone is a little different.
Everyone's going to be a little different, and creating your values and a culture in a company is like human beings. I'm different than you, you're different than me. Everybody has their own level of uniqueness.
Right.
And I believe a corporation and a company is, in a sense, almost a person.
Okay.
And what they want to do is you want to attract the people that are like you.
And so it's a living organism, right?
It pretty much is, and the coolest part about it is, as you start to build your team and as you grow with these people that are going to be key players for you, they will help you figure out the next direction or level that your business can get to.
And a lot of people, they talk about, you want to hire A players, right? You want to hire A players and A players. But where do we find these A players? And we're not just talking about, you post an ad on one of these job posting sites and keep your fingers crossed. Maybe you go through a lot of people, then you find A players. That's not what we're talking about here, right?
Well, depending on how you want to grow your company. I mean, there are a lot of the people that I work for, that's exactly how we do it. We run an advertising campaign, but before we do that, we do the research behind it that most people don't. So we determine what industry are they serving, what are the most important things that these people are looking for in a job, but then we also take a look at why do they leave that job. Then what we do is once we acquire that information, we'll structure a intake process that makes sure that we're talking about what they want and how the company can give it to them, and not what the company doesn't do, which is what they don't want, so that you can attract those top talented people because you're talking to them in words that they understand and want to hear.
And that's something that I do as well, because I would understand each of my team members, their needs. So it's very personal.
It is.
And everybody wants different things, right?
Exactly.
Some people, they want a good compensation, obviously. But some people, I want to be able to exercise the talents, right? They want that space.
Exactly.
Right? Like, let me do my thing, sure, right? And some want to just work well with other people. They want to have fun and do something good and help people, right? Everybody wants very, very different things, right?
Exactly.
And I want to make sure that I can provide them that. So Jack, in terms of hiring, what's a good process? Like, what would you recommend? Are there like different steps?
Well, it actually can be very complex. Generally, what I like to do is break it down into real simplicity. First thing, if you're going to be hiring people, you need to understand how to communicate with them. Because we all know that my generation communicates differently than the generation before me and the generations after us.
Right.
Like one of the biggest critical important, or we've noticed that one of the things that's really increased our level of interaction is how we start our conversation now. We don't call people, we text them.
Yes.
And we text them not like most companies text. Hey, here's this job, come see me. We understand that when you're communicating via text, it's a personal message.
Okay.
So what we do is we understand that and we structure messages so that we can bring them into the fold.
Yeah.
As we start the communication process, we're bringing them from that. And what's our goal? One thing, get them on the phone so that we can actually evaluate them.
Yes, and then how would you do that? Like what questions do you ask? Are there like some special questions that you would ask?
You know, I think that's the trick that everyone wants to buy into when it comes to hiring people. Because you know what? There's no special question. Because each person's different. And what you want to do is you want to focus on your company's values and your culture that will drive them in. And the ways that we do that is we know that when people are shopping or looking for a job, what do they do nowadays? Mr. Google's got everything for you, right?
Yeah.
So what you want to do is you want to lay your messaging out way before that person's ever thought about working for you.
Okay, can you give me an example? How would you do that?
Absolutely. In my industry, I know that I specialize in hiring commercial truck drivers.
Yes.
There's 5 items that they all want.
Yes.
But I'm in staffing. There's 2 other items that I need to factor in.
Yes.
And the first one is, if they're a staffing company, do they got good jobs? And is it temp work?
Yes.
So what we did is every person that we hire, they go through our hiring system.
Yes.
We have a reviews mechanism. So we automate the reviews. So when someone's hired and they're on, we sit down and we ask them. And the questions we ask answer those 2 questions plus the 5 reasons why someone wouldn't want to go to work for another company. So in a sense, what we're doing is we're feeding the audience or your potential hire the information that they want to know about before they ever want to talk to you.
So it's almost like a pre-filter kind of
Exactly. Because if people are going to look you up and they're reading your reviews, and like in my world, we believe in this no bull communication. We like to be real. We like to be honest. Well, there's some people that aren't comfortable with that. They want to have the command and control business model. They want to go to 3 interviews and then get a job offer in 3 days to think about it. Those people will never be attracted to work for us because our messaging is defining the people before they ever get to us.
So they feel like, you know what, this is not the right environment. It's not the right company for me.
You got it. And we only want the right talent anyway.
Right.
So the people that aren't going to live the way that we want them to live or see the values that we have, we don't want them to call us.
Right.
So it's a way of filtering it through so that your team can be more efficient in talking to people who truly are going to be a good fit for the team.
Do you recommend any kind of a test or like personality tests or things like that?
I do and I don't. It depends on what kind of value you put on it. Like for my recruiting team and my sales team, we don't even answer the phone. They got to do an assessment before I ever talk to them.
Yeah.
Then what we do is we give them 3 requests. You need to do the assessment, you need to get the copy, you need to email it to me, and then you need to say this in the email.
Yeah.
Well, that eliminates all the people that can't follow directions.
Correct.
And in business, you know that systems, processes, and procedures are how you are successful.
Correct.
Because if you cannot measure it, how can you improve it? And if they don't follow the directions, there's no way to manage.
It makes sense. And once, let's say you find the right candidate, and okay, now we're gonna hire this person. Then what is next? What's the probation period? Like, what do you recommend to get them, like, the onboarding process?
You know, the onboarding process, depending on the complexity of the position and what position it is. Because, like, if I'm hiring a driver, it's one way. If I'm hiring a recruiter, it's another. If it's a top salesperson, it's another. So what you have to do is you have to be flexible depending on the position and, more importantly, the quality of the candidate you're dealing with. Because myself, I lived in the world of being a very good salesperson. I was very fortunate that I learned a lot, and I applied it, which meant then I had a chip on my shoulder when I went to go to work for people.
Yes.
And if you aren't going to deal with me my way, guess what? I'm on the highway because I'm only looking for people who want to support the way that I work and how I work.
And if it's not a salesperson, let's say different jobs, would you have... I'll give you an example with what I do, right? a lot of the team members on my team right now, almost all of them, because I run an education business.
Right.
A lot of them actually were my students, one form or another.
Oh, how exciting.
So then it's so much easier, I found that, versus I go out there try to find good people.
Oh, most definitely.
Yeah, when they are my students. Mm-hmm. They've gone through my program, one of my programs. They understand what I do.
Okay.
They understand my culture.
Okay.
And they believe in what I do because they have invested in themselves, right? So then once they've gone through that period, I almost felt that by the time they are my students study with me for a period of time, then I put them through a hiring process, it's 10 times easier.
Much, much easier. And I would highly recommend, because they're making that transition from student to representing the company, I would institute a simple mentor program. Find someone that's going to be a good match with them. Have them spend some time with them, because we know one of the main reasons why people quit is they don't have a friend at work.
Yeah, a lack of mentorship.
Yep.
Lack of guidance.
And it's someone that they can use as a confidant.
Right.
Someone that isn't in management, that they can ask the questions that they don't want to ask of management, and letting them know that here's how we do it and it's okay.
That's very, very true. Now, what about, so we have the culture piece, we also have the system piece.
That's true.
Now, the system piece where we talk about maybe could be documents, could be PDF, could be training, could be procedures, right? I found that sometimes, and that's why I want your opinion on this, where, let's say McDonald's, very rigid system.
Yes.
Right? Like this is the only way you do it. You don't change a damn thing, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah, you don't change a damn, like the ketchup is 2 squeezed, it's 2 squeezed. Not 1.5, not 3, it's 2 squeezed, right?
Exactly.
But versus a company that's such as an advertising company or different types of companies where it requires more flexibility, there are more changes, more dynamic. Like, what do you recommend in terms of putting together systems for that type of company?
Well, generally what I recommend is I steal a lot of things from other industries.
Yes.
And I'm not a big sports person, but I admire the way people run a sports team. And what do sports teams do every single season prior to season? They practice, right? And what do they practice? The fundamentals.
Correct.
So in my opinion is when you bring someone in, especially when it's an interactive business like ours, and there is a lot of flexibility in the beginning, I give them none. I make them toe the line. I want you to do it my way. I want to make sure that you understand it so that you're representing the company correctly, you're representing our culture correctly, but more importantly, there's a consistency in messaging. Because messaging is critical for people's belief and trust that you do what you do.
So kind of train them on the fundamentals first.
I focus on the fundamentals. We grill them really hard on them in the beginning. It's a hard job because, I mean, we do a day of training and then I test them. And then if they don't work, we fix it. And once you have the fundamentals, then that person that you hired because of their personality, because of their skill set, can blossom. And that blossoming isn't taking your company into a different messaging or track that you want it to go.
So they can exercise their creativity, but then once they've gone through training, it's like, because I'm a martial artist, so I can understand from martial art metaphor, where say I'm learning karate, right? You got to learn the fundamentals. Here's how you punch, here's how you kick. No, it's this angle, right? You got to get everything right. Once you get that, once you quote unquote kind of master it and understand it, now you can kind of find your own style, right? Develop your own thing. Everyone's a little bit different, right? Depends on the psychological makeup or physical makeup of the body, everything that they do, right? Shorter, longer, more flexible, right? That's what you recommend.
That's exactly what I recommend. And we call it the modeling method. Stole it from Tony Robbins. In the old days when I didn't have anybody and I was trying to become someone, they said model success. And that's how we explain our training. In the beginning, we want you to model what we do, word for word, system per process, everything. But once you understand it, we want you to make it yours. And once they're able to have that foundation and the ability to have the freedom to express how they do it, you have a team member who follows the guidelines, keeps your messaging correct, but doesn't feel stifled as if I'm just a robot and I can only do what they tell me to do.
I think what's the way I see, Jack, what you do is it's kind of like you took your skill from marketing and sales and advertising, and you created an advertising program, campaigns, just for hiring, not attracting customers, but attracting talents.
That is correct. So basically what we do is we create recruiting and branding campaigns that build goodwill with the people that we're recruiting, reinforce the company brand without being sleazy or deceptive in our advertising or communications practices.
Perfect. And do you recommend like companies where they kind of like headhunt, they like steal people from other companies? Oh, that's a very talented person. I pay you more. You come work for me, right?
You know what? I tried that early in my career. First thing I said is, oh God, I'm going to hire all my competition's people. Here's the problem. You run into the problem that I explained in the beginning. If you hire someone who has the skills to do the job, guess what? They're working for a paycheck. And if you're usually poaching talent from someone else, all they're doing is chasing money. You know, I think it's way more important to make sure that you focus on your culture, your values, and how you do it.
And attract the right people.
And attract the right people, exactly. And I also believe that if you could grow someone in their position, give them a career path that they can see
100%.
With measurable results, then you're tying into what's important to them. They see a future, they see a reason to do what you want them to do, and they want to excel doing it because they see their pot at the end of the rainbow.
Right, and that's just perfect because I'm thinking about even within my company, all my directors, all the key leaders. First of all, I didn't recruit them from someone somewhere else. That never happened. And number two is none of them, not one, will qualify to do that particular job. It's always promoting and growing from within.
Right, but they had the basic skill set, they had the vision, and they seen the world the way you did, which ties into the culture and the values. Because it's like, if people see where you're going and what you're doing, then they're going to help you get there.
Yes, and then the skills is almost, we then have them learn the skill after.
Well, what we do is we take that base skill that they have and we fine tune it and refine it.
It's true.
So you don't try to bring someone who has no sales aptitude into a sales position, but what you want is a person that has sales aptitude and develop them so that they're your type of salesperson.
Right, that makes sense. Jack, we're talking about now attracting good people. What about keeping good people?
Well, the key to reducing turnover is hiring the right people to begin with. And then once again, it's creating a career path for them. Because if people don't see a future vision for where they are, then they don't know where to go.
That's right.
You know, one of the biggest challenges a lot of people have nowadays is they say, these millennials, they don't stay at their job long. I says, because there's no career path for them. It's not like it was in the old days. You don't start out as a manager and 5 years later hope you become a director or something. It just doesn't work that way.
And things are moving so much faster. It's just like, I think the industry that has a lot of problems now hiring people, like the fast food industry.
Oh gosh, yes.
Right, where they have huge turnover, and because there's no career path.
There isn't, but look at some of the smart businesses out there that are doing it. McDonald's is a perfect example. They've now branded themselves as what? Your first job. It's where you start out. Then you see their commercials where they talk about customer service, experience, or all the things that prepare you for the future, right? And they also have a tuition program. So they're really being smart. They understand that they're beginning employee, the people that are just entering the workforce are their main workforce. So based on where you are in your industry and what you can offer determines how you want to create that messaging.
That's right. They're not saying that, this is going to be, your career forever. Like, hey, you know what? We know. So they know they're realistic about that.
Exactly.
That it's going to be here maybe for 1 year or 12 months, whatever, how long, many years, right? And from there, then they're going to go for the next thing.
You got it. So what you're trying to do is give them that advantage to move forward. And another trend that's critically important to understand is most businesses nowadays won't hire someone who's only had one job. They want you to go to other companies so they can train you, educate you, so that you're a better employee for them when they want to bring you on.
Like certain companies, I know that if someone has worked at Starbucks, example, like those are like, you worked at Starbucks, so they know you're well-trained, customer service, communication skill, and all those things, right?
Exactly. And that's what people are looking for. So then that way you don't have to bring them up from the beginning to the end.
From your experience, what companies do you look up to, admire, like their hiring process?
I think it's probably more their branding campaigns and what they do.
Okay.
And they're going to be a lot of the tech companies because they've had to differentiate themselves to be successful. I live in Northern California, and what do we all hear about? The jobs at Facebook, Google, Apple, and what do they talk about? They talk about all these great things.
Yeah.
But what really I think is important was Apple and what they did. What they did is they created what we call a company story. And what they did is they started out with their creation, which was Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, right? They drop out of college, go to work or build a business in someone's garage, and now it's the most powerful company in the world. But they didn't only do that, they built in other mechanisms to attract the type of talent they wanted. So we all knew that when Steve Jobs was running, it was what? His message to his team was, we're democratizing the way people communicate. We're changing the world. They gave him that vision. And I think those are the things that companies need to do now. And I know it sounds hard, but I do it every day for trucking. And let me tell you, how much fun do you think a trucking job is? It truly isn't. You know, if you put your mind to it and you create what we call career messaging, you keep consistency in it, it's going to help you bring the people through the door.
It's very, very true, because I think if you just try to bring talents in with money, that doesn't work. Right, because like you said, anyone can outpay what you pay.
Unfortunately, that's true.
Right?
You
like
know?
It's just like competing in marketing in terms of price.
It's the
right?
same thing.
You live by price, you die by price. Right?
Oh yeah, and if you want to live and die that way, I don't want to work with you.
Right? So that's a problem, right? So, but it's bringing them in a way where they, even in the beginning, that depends on the stage of your company, but even in the beginning, the startup or you're just building up period of time. But if the right people, they will roll up the sleeves and say, "Hey,
exactly,
let's do this," right?
Exactly, and it really doesn't matter what stage of company you're in. If you're a startup, then you're selling the dream of the future. If you're in your adolescent stage of your business, and then where are you selling? The next step you're going to.
Correct.
If you're at the top of your market, what do you do?
You're on top.
You want to talk about the new innovations and the ways that you're going to change it, so that people see that there is a future that makes sense for them. And that's the most important message, is to make sure that these people see that there's value in putting time and effort with you other than just a paycheck.
What about in terms of compensation? A lot of people talk about different types of compensation. Of course, depends on the positions. But what do you recommend? Example for, let's say, lower level team members, like the salary, of course. What about like for senior or even executive level? Like what do you recommend to structure those?
I see compensation differently than most people do. Like the person who answers our phone, which is we call our front office coordinator, she gets paid a performance-based pay plan. She gets her base to get her through the door, but if she was giving the customer experience, wowing the way the phone's going, she gets bonuses just like the sales team. And I believe that when we compensate employees, I don't do group compensation, because I don't believe that is how you get the best out of people. Because we all have worked at companies where you get paid a bonus based on the whole team, and guess what? 2 of the people are hanging out, 4 of the other people are busting their butts to make it happen.
The 4 are pissed off because they know like the 2 didn't pull their weight.
And they're pissed. Exactly. So what happens? They say, hey, why do I want to work that hard if I'm making the same amount of money as the people that don't? So I believe in individual compensation plans that are always performance-based pay. We don't give raises for how much time you're there. We give raises for how you wow our customers and your knowledge.
So they get a decent base pay, and then the bonus based on the KPIs.
That is correct.
Okay, depends on the division. And
depending on what position it is, what division, what geographical territory, exactly.
Right. And do you measure them by like some KPI? Like I do 3 or 5, but like what do you recommend?
See, I'm a bit of an analytics geek, so it goes a little deeper than that. What I did is myself and my partner have built off of an existing CRM system, a whole a reporting mechanism, and I track every single thing that we do.
Wow.
So each position has different KPIs. The person who's answering the phone is different than a recruiter, that's different than a salesperson, that's different than my customer experience person.
Let's take the customer experience person. How do you measure their performance?
Perfect. Well, in my world, my customer experience person is someone who is the point of contact for our clients.
Yes.
So the client calls in, deals with this person, they coordinate the position, all the mechanics that go behind it, and how they get rewarded is how they're able to keep customer retention.
Okay.
And we all know that some people buy sometimes, then they kind of fade away. So they also get incentives for making sure that we're bringing people back into the fold.
Like a reactivate campaign.
You got it. That's exactly what it is. It's our reactivation campaign.
Got it. So those then, even though they're customer service, quote unquote.
Correct.
But then you treat them like a sales position because what they do also brings in, it's not directly like sales, but they still bring revenue into the company.
That is correct.
Indirectly.
Indirectly, they're bringing revenue. But more importantly, I'm not worried about the revenue. You know what I'm worried about? The customer experience and the lifetime value. Because in our business, we know that people only choose to work with us when they need us. And when they don't, they don't. And what we want to do is to have top of mind awareness at all times, so when that need comes, guess what? They only think of us and no one else.
Yes. And Jack, when you work with a company, how do you work with them? Do you go into a company and help them put together the campaign, all that together? Or do you kind of look at what they have and just do some consulting, or like everything in between?
I have a lot of different things we do, but everything in a nutshell is what we do is we sit down and we do a full-on, for lack of a better way to explain it, a SWOT analysis. What are your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats in your industry? Then I go from that industry to how you compete against the other people in your industry. Then we do what other industries can we draw people who have similar skill sets to bring into your industry. And then once we've looked at those factors, that's when we create our, what we call a company story. And the company story is how do I want to say it? The company story is almost like a sales presentation, but what it is it's making sure that our company's career messaging is consistent with every person we're talking to, which builds that value system of everyone gets treated right. It reinforces the culture that we don't lie to people, we don't cheat, we don't steal, and anyone in the company understands what you're doing. So when they talk to someone else, they're not getting miscommunication.
Got it.
Because when you hire someone new, they're in class, they're all excited, and then we all have what? Jaded employees, and they go, "Oh wow, what about this?" And what's the old guy say? "Well, that never really worked," or something. You want to keep that buy-in the whole time.
Yes, and then for the company story, are you talking about? Do we need how long is it, or how thorough do you want to get, or do we talk about just the company, or what about the founder's story? How does that all integrate?
That's really good because there's really three components to it. Component number one is going to be what we call your creation story. Your creation story is going to be just like what I said about Apple.
How did it came about?
How it came about, why it came about, what are they trying to do, and what they're doing. Once we have that, then we're going to do research a little deeper on what is that job title looking for in a job. What are they not like in a job? And then what we do is we take what that company currently offers and we just rearrange the messaging so that we're hitting the points for someone who's looking for that job is important to them. Does that make sense?
It makes sense. And then, this is so powerful. I love it.
Thank you.
Yeah, so one more question. So what about as the company grows, now you have, let's say, your CEO and your first layer of leaders, management. And then as we grow, you have the second layer, right? Now, how do we make sure that the second, even third layer, the people that we hire, would understand the CEO's vision, the founder's vision?
Really simple. When you're a founder and CEO of the company and your company is at that level, your job is basically changed. Now what you are is what I call the preacher. Your job and your responsibility is to drive home your company vision every day, every time you communicate with these people, and that way everyone knows where you're going. Because a lot of times what happens is I'll sit in a boardroom with all the C-level executives and they have all these great fun things that they do. Then I go and talk to the transportation manager who I got to deal with every single day, and there's a big disconnect. And the disconnect is because I believe a lack of transparency, but more importantly, you just need to reinforce the message. It's like like sales. Repetition, 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 right? It's the mother of learning, and it's how people will buy into your vision because you're living your vision at the same time.
And what you're also talking about is you have to sell the vision constantly.
All day
to your
long.
team.
All day long.
All the time.
I mean, the bigger your company is, the more employees you have, and you know what? Things happen in people's lives, unfortunately. There's divorces, there's kids, there's this. So their world changes. So you always got to make sure you're bringing them in, seeing where you're going, so that they know where they're going. Because half the complaints most people have is, I don't know our direction. You know, I don't see where we're going.
And
Why are we doing this?
Then they hesitate.
Exactly.
They're like, well, I don't know where we're going, so I guess I'll slow down and see, look at what other people are doing and see, right? And then when that happens, other people see that, well, I guess I will slow down too.
Yep, and then it becomes that chain effect, and then before you know it, no one's going out towards a direction except for their own direction.
Yes.
And when
then it's like this, right?
You got it. When the inmates are running the jail, it's not a fun place to be when you're the warden. You know.
No, I totally get it. So, what's one piece of advice you want to leave for entrepreneurs that if they want to grow in terms of bringing on the best people, or maybe they're a little bit afraid, they still have a small business, they want to scale, but I don't know if I should hire, when should I hire? Like, what's one piece of advice you'll leave for them?
The one piece of advice I can say is make sure that you understand where your company's going, where you want it to go, how you want to get there, and you stay consistent in that messaging when you're talking to people. And do not hire your friends or associates. Okay, I'm a family-run business. My daughter and my sister work with me. Let me tell you, it's a challenge.
Yes, it is a challenge. Because you work in a business together, you see each other in Christmas, right?
It could be, well, try firing one. It's not it doesn't make for a good Thanksgiving, to say the least.
No. It's just very, very true. And you might think, I can trust them and all that, but usually family business, it's a little bit challenging.
It's a tricky thing, you know.
But when it works very well.
I was going to say right now, I have people, you know what, I am here. I don't even answer my phone. I don't look at an email in 4 days because I know my team's got my back.
Yes.
And they're headed up by people who care about me for more than just a paycheck.
Awesome.
You know.
Jack, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Human code, when it comes out,
I will definitely let you know, so give you a link so we can share with people.
I appreciate it.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
That's it for today's episode of The Dan Lok Show. Head over to thedanlokshow.com and be sure to subscribe to the show on iTunes. You are guaranteed to expand your thinking, your network, and your net worth. So be sure to subscribe to the show today. Dan also has a gift for you. Go to www.danlokshow.com because there are bonuses when you subscribe.